The Canadian Pacific had just completed their coast-to-coast railway in November of 1885, driving the last spite to connect the Atlantic to the Pacific here in Craigellachie, BC, just outside of Revelstoke. But 2 years later, in 1883, they had discovered the Banff Hot Springs, and once Canadian Pacific's visionary Cornelius Van Horn saw it, he uttered the famous quote, "If we can't export the scenery, we must import the tourists." Now, across the prairies, passengers would get to indulge in these deluxe dining cars. But the soaring peaks and the plunging valleys in the Kicking Horse Pass, along with the treacherous, avalanche-prone area of the Rogers Pass, made it impossible to haul these dining cars by train without the risk of a major accident. I mean, the 5% decline alone down Mount Stephen was too much for these heavy dining cars of the day. So the railway hotels were the solution for passengers to hop off and have a meal during their 5-day journey across Canada. And the Canadian Pacific began construction on the Banff Springs Hotel in the fall of 1886, and the grand opening was June 5th of 1888, and the 5-story hotel, seemingly reaching to the peaks of the Rockies, would charge an astronomical $3.50 per room per night. Pretty pricey for the time, and just imagine if they knew what rooms were going for today. Now, the Banff Springs Hotel offers a breathtaking view of Mount Rundle to the west and the Fairholme mountain ranges to the east, while looking down towards the Bow Falls, which actually flow east from the Banff Springs all the way into Calgary, not far away from the next closest Grand Railway hotel, the Palliser. And don't worry, I'll have a dedicated video on the Palliser coming up in this series. Now, at the dawn of the 20th century, the Banff Springs Hotel would begin a never-ending series of expansions, so stick with me here. In 1900, they built a west wing to the hotel, and in 1903, they were connected with the original east wing. And by 1903, the hotel's demand was so large that they were turning down about 5,000 guests a season. And by 1910, Canadian Pacific had just completed their brand new passenger station today, known as the Banff Heritage Station, which you see here, and passengers got an incredible greeting from the Canadian Rockies looking down on them, regardless if they were arriving east or west. And this station also meant another expansion in 1911 of the hotel, which included the brand new Banff Springs Golf Course, as well as a center tower, which was then completed in 1914, and they even planned a natural hot spring pool at the front of the hotel, which never came to life, but instead they built 2 pools in the back. More on that later. 1915 saw the golf course expand from 9 holes to 18, and the Banff Springs is a Scottish castle, so it only makes sense that they would keep Scotland's favorite pastime near and dear to their hearts. And in 1925, Canadian Pacific would begin destroying the wooden wings and begin replacing them with a rock-faced fireproof structure, but ironically enough, in 1926 the wooden wings caught fire, destroying the dining room, the tower windows, and the original wings. And although that may seem like a bit of a setback, most of the old wings hadn't been demolished yet, so the fire actually sped up Canadian Pacific's timeline to create this new expansion. And in May of 1928, they opened the version of the Banff Springs Hotel that we would all recognize today, and by the end of the year, Canadian Pacific's collection of Grand Railway hotels in the Rockies, with the Banff Springs, Glacier House in the Rogers Pass, which would be demolished the following year in 1929, Mount Stephen House and Field, which would stand until 1963 when it was demolished and replaced by today's Field Station, which ironically enough hasn't seen a passenger train since 1990, and the Chateau Lake Louise, which was gaining a lot of popularity by this time with its new expansion after a fire of its own in July of 1924. And yes, the Chateau Lake Louise will be the focus of the next episode in this series of the Grand Railway Hotels of Canada. Now, the Banff Springs Hotel would continue to boom, and when Canadian Pacific had launched their new passenger train, the Dominion, in 1933, they had the most luxurious way for passengers to experience the Rockies. And this would attract high-end clientele until the start of World War II, where it all came to a screeching halt, and the Banff Springs Hotel would close its doors from 1942 until 45. Now, by rail, by sea, and by air was the Canadian Pacific slogan at the time, and they didn't have any stock in automobiles, but Banff exists because of the railway. So in 1955, Canadian Pacific had made their biggest investment to date, debuting their brand new passenger fleet, which was a stainless steel consist, custom built, with scenic viewing domes across the top of the train. And I mean, these cars were literally built for the rocky peaks around Banff. And this train was named the Canadian, and would continue the timeless tradition of being Canada's favorite way to travel by train. Going from Montreal and Toronto, following the shores of the Lake Superior into Thunder Bay, into the prairies, arriving here in Winnipeg at the Canadian Pacific Station, west into Calgary outside the Palliser Hotel, and into the Rockies here at the Banff Heritage Station, around Morant's Curve and the Lake Louise, before heading into the Selkirk Mountains of Revelstoke, and finally arriving 3,000 kilometers west in Vancouver at Waterfront Station. But this glory was extremely short-lived because the hotel would adapt to the clientele arriving on the train, more representing the middle class, and into the rear view were the days where only the rich and the elites and the most famous stayed at Banff Castle, including Marilyn Monroe. And in 1962, the Trans-Canada Highway would be completed due to the rise of the automobile, now connecting Canada ocean to ocean by road as well, making Banff even more accessible by car with better roads all year round. And as a result, the Banff Springs Hotel would open for its first winter season in December of 1969, But that didn't go very well, and since Canadian Pacific's business model at the time was, if it's not making us money, destroy it, a hotel demolition was actually heavily considered after the summer season of 1970. And again, I know it's hard to believe considering how popular the hotel is now, but back then, this was how the Canadian Pacific did business. And in 1980, Calgary, Banff, and Lake Louise would host the 1988 Winter Olympics, and the hotel would go through a few renovations, one of which included the conversion of the outdoor pool into a hot pool, and spoiler alert, it is awesome. Fast forward to April of 2024, we turn the page from past to present, here at the base of Sulphur Mountain where lies the Banff Springs Hotel, where history and beauty converge to create an experience unlike any other.